about you.
Hello, and welcome to the HRart Rise Morning Show. Happy Friday to all of you. Hope that you're staying safe and staying warm throughout the entire country, because Yash knows that we're not the only ones that have snow, and there's lots of places that are having snow that are not used to having snow. But I am glad that you're here with me, and hopefully will raise your heart elevation and warm you up a little bit here from the inside out. All right, so I hope you had a really great week. I feel like it flew by. I know that I'm amidst my really busy season. I just have a lot of stuff going on, and I think I've mentioned this before, but my busy season kind of ebbs and flows like many of you, and this is my busy season, and I will enter a calmer season. It's not busy, a calmer season, probably May-ish, and then it will pick back up like August. So usually fall and spring. Yes, I'm going to call it spring, but fall and spring are my busy seasons. So let's take a sneak peek at our heart chat for today. So our heart chat today is all about, if you saw the episode title, Shaken Trees. And our heart chat today is going to be, you are needed as a soul stirrer. Love that word. Your connected path is sending powerful ripples throughout lives. You need to show up when you feel called, recognizing that it is essential work regardless of immediate outcome. So today we're going to talk about the ways that you as an HR practitioner are sending powerful ripples, even though you may not realize it. So I'm going to open your minds and open your perspective to how you really are sending powerful ripples and making a difference with people that you're interacting with on a regular basis. And on the other side of this, I want to talk about where you potentially are feeling called and how to navigate that. And in particular, talking about systems and approaches to our work. Because the beautiful thing about leaving 2020, entering 2021, and seeing very clearly that it's not going to change is that we are in a place where we can reimagine and rethink and are encouraged to revision what our work will look like. So I'm really excited to talk about this with you today. And it also ties very beautifully to what our last topic, our last heart chat will be in February. And then we'll be transitioning into March, which we're going to talk about new beginnings, spring, preparation. It's going to be a really awesome month coming in March. If I think I have said this, maybe not consistently, but the theme for this month has been conversations from essentially my heart to yours. And I use this, I know I did talk about this, but I use this beautiful, divinely kind of connected goddess deck, but had the concepts of heart, like legit heart, just embedded all throughout it. And so those served as sources of inspiration. So I'm hoping that as we're going through this month and you're experiencing this heart chats, that you're hearing whispers from your heart connecting to you, pushing you and nudging you. And hopefully I'm just bringing some more clarity to that and helping with that push. All right. So now it is time for Posts to Ponder. Let's check out what we have going on. Today is February 19th, 2021, and we have some posts that made Samm ponder and hopefully will make you ponder. So the first one comes from, once again, I'm still hanging out on Instagram quite a bit here. A little bit of LinkedIn trickling back in. So on Instagram, once again, following hashtag INFJ things. If you are a Myers-Briggs fan, you will be familiar with INFJ, which is my results of the Myers-Briggs. So I follow my fellow people on Instagram and the things that we find entertaining. So I think the best thing I ever did in my adult life was start digging can't read, was start digging deep and asking myself, why am I the way I am and do things the way I do? It takes a ton of work and intentionality, but getting to know yourself on a deeper level will help you thrive. I just started this 6 years ago. I mean, maybe there was hints of it before that, but really I started to dig 6 years ago because I think I was just at a rock bottom place that if I didn't dig and find some sort of positive, that I was really going to like turn into a hermit and go into my hole. So 6 years ago, I definitely did that. I'm still digging and learning and having these beautiful moments of transformation and an appreciation and loving of who I am, rather than most of my life that I've spent wondering why I'm not like others. And it's been really interesting to watch myself, who is extremely introverted, slowly coming out and interacting with extroverts again. Extroverts tend to dominate and intimidate me, especially when they are kind of like a shiny object. So they're really good at what they do. So I'm thinking of one friend in particular who is awesome and very supportive and pushes me beyond belief. But he's able to easily engage in certain platforms that I have to work really hard to get there. And even 2 days ago, I was talking to a photographer friend who's going to help us rebrand some things for our organization. And even it's just so natural for them to say, you need to just do these things. And I would beat myself up to think, well, how come I can't just do that? How come I can't just step into that space and be like that? And there's tons of work that's now come out. Susan Cain with Quiet and on being introverted, and the powerful strengths that we possess is really amazing. So that one definitely resonated with me. #Lightworker. You cannot heal a person who keeps using their pain as an excuse to hurt you. Read that again. If you are here and you have drank the Kool-Aid and believe that you are a healer, and that expanded definition and scope when we talk about being an HR healer, it is important for us to recognize when we cannot heal or when we are not meant to be that person's healer. I'm a big believer that if we all show up, everyone's healer will show up as a result. But everyone has a specific healer. That's why some people love me, some people hate me, some people get the message, some people don't understand the message. I'm just not that person for their path. And that's something I resisted for a long time, thinking that I had to figure out every path, but that's not the case. Those that I'm meant to work with will show up and I'll work with and help, and they'll be the bridge for others. But I think it's really, really easy to fall into a pattern where you feel like you need to help someone who keeps using their own pain as a reason to hurt you. So if that is a cycle that you're in, know that you can't heal them. And so now it's time for you to put your boundaries back up. Simon Sinek. So I'm actively recording the summer. Thinking summer. That's what I do. So we start recording in winter and thinking about summer. So the summer podcast book club series. The first book we're reading is The Infinite Game by Simon Sinek. And so it's just the way that the world works. I've been going on LinkedIn and Simon's been posting and they've been really resonating. I think that I have maybe 2 or 3 more quotes that are in the pipeline that are coming up in the next coming weeks. But here is one for today, which is, before we can build the world we want to live in, we have to imagine it. Greatness starts with a clear vision of the future. And we're going to talk about that today in our lessons, about those powerful ripples and why we have to imagine the world we want to live in and work in as HR practitioners. If you avoid the conflict, keep the peace, you start a war inside yourself. Glennon Doyle, the author of Untamed. It's a phenomenal book. We unpacked this last summer on the summer podcast reading series. I think I did it by myself because in quarantine nobody really wanted to read, but that's okay. It was an unbelievable, incredibly moving book, one that really nourished me and helped me with digging deep and understanding and that whole dynamic I was talking about, being an introvert, because she's very much the same way. And so to hear someone else's experiences through their lens that are very relatable but not mine was much of a gift. And this is wholeheartedly true. You know, when we avoid conflict, when we choose to suppress it, we basically are starting a war inside of ourselves. If we want to unpack this from a Chinese medicine perspective, from a medical qigong, you are storing those emotions in your body and you're actually causing a state of unwell or disease, dis-ease in your body. So don't underestimate conflict. And when emotions arise, they're meant to be expressed. So we need to express them and find a way to do that. So yeah. Last but not least, Miss Gabby Bernstein. She's working hard. She must have some projects that are getting ready to release, because that's when we really start to see an uptick in quotes, that vibe out there. But Gabby has this one that she's posted. She has a Instagram live show, which is full of all kinds of beautiful things. So if you love any of her quotes, I highly recommend following her on Instagram to join her for #Dear Gabby. And I think she's posting those videos on YouTube now too. So if you're a YouTuber, subscribe to her channel and watch some of those, because she is a beautiful individual and her words are just game changing. Obviously, they've been monumental in my life. So do nothing and let the universe show you what to do. One of the things that has come up time and time again over the last few weeks is me having to coach individuals on, you have two ways on how we move forward. You can attempt to control everything and believe that you know what's best. And so you tell the universe what you need delivered. At the end of the day, it really should be this or something better. Trusting and knowing that maybe you don't see all the pieces of the big picture. I think last week we talked about this concept of life being this winding path, that we're not seeing all the curves and the nooks and the crannies, because if we saw those curves that were coming, we would probably choose not to take certain paths, because sometimes life is hard and there are challenges, but they are necessary. And so we are making decisions based off of that being our reality. Whereas if we say, or something better, the universe, your belief system, whatever that may be, but this belief in this higher self, even if that's just within yourself, there is a world of possibility that you cannot even begin to imagine or understand, because you cannot see the complete picture. So stop putting yourself in this tiny little box when the ocean, the great unknown, is meant to be your playground. So, yeah, great post to ponder. Hope one of them served you and helped you, because they definitely gave me little nudges that I needed over the last week. All right, so we're ready for this heart talk. Let's talk about how you are a soul stirrer. Let's talk about this work. So I talk about being an HR intuitive and talking about being an HR healer, and people keep asking, where's the rubber hit the road? What does this actually look like? Today you're going to get a real nice taste of what does it look like in practice when we are engaging as people-driven practitioners, what we are doing in the workplace. All right, so I'm going to share with you 3 different ways this manifests, and one we're actually going to unpack on a greater depth, because I think that's important to kind of understand that. So starting with point number 1, it's the small things. So you want to know where the ripples begin? The ripples begin with every conversation that you have. That wonderful open door policy where you really embrace that and people come and they speak to you and they share with you. You are sending ripples. Every human interaction like that, you are sending ripples. And I don't care if you're at an organization for a day, 10 years, every human touch point that you have is a ripple. Every time you take care of a benefits question when they are struggling with getting a claim covered, anytime they come and express to you a time that they felt unsafe or a challenge they're having at work or when life is just hard, you're doing the small things for the ripples. When you walk around the office or the facility or the shop or the factory or whatever it is, and you just say hello and you check in, you remember their names, those small things add up. We know that those human touch points, those conversations, the personal aspect is what matters, and you do it basically naturally. In fact, I think most of the time as HR practitioners, we are so overworked and overwhelmed because we make time for these things, whereas others who are not focused in this capacity so heavily on task do not engage in that because there's just no time, and that's missing out. And just because maybe you're not a social butterfly, like I'm not a social butterfly, I still know as a HR practitioner that there is a need for those small human interactions. So even if it made me uncomfortable to do rounds in a store or an office, I did, to say hello, to smile, to check in. Was I the best at it all the time? No. But the 3 out of 5 that I did a stellar job with, I was sending powerful ripples. I was making a difference. Number 2, it's the seeds. So here I think about those meetings that you finally get a seat at and you're sitting there and you share an opinion and it falls flat. I don't want you to see it as falling flat because there's more to that than it just falling flat. You are planting seeds. So some of the most challenging situations I've been in with leaders that HR has labeled as impossible to work with, there's no way to change their mindset, they have done work a way that has worked for them for a very long time. And experience has told them to trust that knowledge. Does not mean that you are not expanding and growing their mindset. It just won't happen overnight. You can't say something that is so foreign to them, and then in that moment they'll be like, oh, you know what? You're absolutely right. We should do that. But you are planting a seed. Every time you're intentional and you speak up and you share in those meetings, these seeds are being planted, and one day they will grow. If you haven't read the book, The Slight Edge by Jeff Olson, I highly, highly recommend it. One of my favorite books in the world. But one of the things that he talks about is that there's this curve, this success curve, and this failure curve, essentially. And we're all kind of traveling on this time axis of when we're going to see progress. When we're going to see it, we don't know, but we know it will come. If you keep planting seeds, it's going to happen. And combining that with the small things, those human touch points, because some of those touch points are those leaders that never had access to have those conversations with someone in the workspace. They're stopping and they're sitting in your office and having these little small chats. Yes, they have a task or something they need addressed, but then they're coming and hanging out and talking about these little things that add up over time, establishing your credibility. And then as you're planting these seeds, oh my gosh, this magical day, poof, we have a flower, and we start moving forward. So it does happen. And even if you felt like no, in this one place it didn't, I guarantee you planted seeds for the next person. And if the next person started cultivating and caring for those seeds that were planted, they will see a blossom. They will. I don't know why I'm on this spring analogy, but they will. They will. All right. So those are the first two. So the third is, it's the system. So here I'm going to take, what we think is practical HR and say that it is the way we choose to do our work that really allows us to stir souls and serve our calling. but it's the way that we approach it. And I use the word system intentionally because there's a very popular show on Netflix. They're on Instagram constantly. And there's a book called The Home Edit. So it's an organization ladies that have this very successful business and concept. And they talk about this concept of using systems. And they have actually a 4-step process for organizing. And I'm going to use that as my base inspiration. So thank you, The Home Edit, Joanna, and oh my gosh, I can't remember the other one's name. I just love Joanna's headbands. That's totally like a different sidebar. But I'm going to use their source of inspiration for these organizational systems and their 4-step process for how they organize to talk about how we can unpack and make sure our systems for HR and the way that we're doing work are setting us up so that we can shake them trees. So first, in the It's a System, number 1 is to edit. In the Home Edit, this is when they're purging and getting rid of anything that does not serve. This is what the HR audit should be. So when we think of HR audit, and I have 3 C's on here, we automatically jump to B, which is compliance, which is absolutely important. We want to make sure we limit risk, because when we're thinking about making sure we provide value to an organization, we've already identified that's a number 1 way. If we can limit risk, we're on the right track. So that is there. So beyond that, there's 2 other C's that are there. A is clarity. Like, does it make sense? And not make sense to you, but make sense to the employee. So even if it's leaders or staff members, all of them they're all employees. They all work and care about the company. They're all being compensated by the company. And so these systems are meant to serve them. Does that clearly look like that? Do the policies and the benefits and the procedures, do they make sense? From a literal, just like, do I understand them? But then on the other one, does it even make sense for the organization in general? So I think that we get into a mode where we just feel like there's these canned requirements that we have to have, but also the beauty of you being embedded in an organization is that you get to craft what is meant for that organization, because a one size doesn't fit all. If that was the case, then we would have these pre-done kits, and we do that. But yet a handbook needs to be reflective of the culture. The policies need to be reflective of the culture. I can't tell you how many times I've seen policies that basically break down a culture because they don't sound like nothing like what you say, how you do business, and how you care for your people. This sounds like a tyrant or a dictator or super strict. So the clarity needs to be there. Expectations. I expect you to do your work. Is that clear? Do I know what that means? I expect you to do your job. Are the job descriptions clear? Do they match? So when we're doing an audit, yes, it's compliance and limiting risk. But then that next layer, which I think is actually more important than compliance, is the clarity, the purpose, the relevance to the organization. And I could even make an argument of simplifying, simplicity. We sometimes have so many things in there. Like I talk about pet insurance all the time. If I have nobody who engages and uses pet insurance, is it something that just causes more confusion because I'm unable to devote my time and attention to being really clear about our benefits package and how it serves them and how they can use it? All right. And the last one is cause. So part of this HR audit process is identifying when there are fires, what potentially could be the cause there, and how do we, not even how do we address it. When we're auditing, like just having the awareness of what potentially is the root cause of some of this disconnect that is happening. So identifying cause, obviously compliance, and then instilling clarity there. Number 2 is categorize. So this is going to translate to HR functions. So even if you are one person, if you're a department of one, which is this phrase that we like to use in the world of HR, you are still a department and you're responsible for several functions. We think about when I say HR and someone asks what that is, I'll be like, oh, well, we do the hiring and firing and everything in between. But if you're in HR, you know that the functions are workforce planning. They are recruitment and retention. They are HR development, which is training. They are employee relations, labor relations, these buckets. And you need to write out these functions that are for your organization's benefits and compensation, and recognize that you're caring for all of those. And even if you have a payroll person that maybe does not directly report to you, because I know that business structures are established not necessarily the way that we understand them from an HR perspective and what's in our function. But knowing that all those functions have an impact on the employees, which means they're going to have an impact on your role. And so we need to understand what falls in all those buckets. On top of that, from an audit standpoint, taking what you've purged, simplified, and then looking at those buckets and particularly paying attention to which buckets are empty. Like I teach a HR development course at the local college, and beyond training how to do your day job or how to do the actual tasks of the job at hand, we are very much struggling to get to that next evolution of developing you for the future, integrating workforce planning, which is that strategic piece that is missing. So gridding out, your system and saying, here are my functions and what falls in these, lets you know where you need to kind of prioritize and kind of make a game plan and those kinds of things. It is also the number one way that we can start soul stirring, because if you end up realizing your HR development bucket is completely empty and you can't deliver there because you're stretched too thin, that's when you start having conversations about training programs but prioritizing what goes in that function. So categorizing, recognizing what you really have going on. Containment. So this is when we translate it to efficient and effective. So especially if you're a department of one, and regardless, as you are establishing credibility and you're building your department, it is really important for you to be efficient and be effective. You can't do everything. And I think sometimes we go down that pipeline saying, here are all the things that I really, really need to do. I get that, but we just can't do it all. And so we need to pick and choose. We need to choose our battles wisely for effectiveness. If you plan that way and you focus on being effective and embracing efficiency, so looking at what must be done versus what would be nice, you will slowly be sending those ripples that will give you the support systems that are needed to do the other things. So it's not saying they're never going to happen, but we have to get really streamlined about making a difference. It's when we're tackling everything that we are still sending ripples, but we're struggling to make them really intentional and strong. And last is focus. So here's that HR vision. We are prone to falling to doing reaction-driven work. So something happens, a fire, we put it out. We have to start imagining what HR looks like in an organization and moving in that direction. How can you best care for the people and do what needs to be done so that people can be that game-changing element in the organization? Reshift your focus from reacting and putting out fires to visioning and making time for that and being intentional about it. If you're not, I'm going to be brutally honest, and I believe that a lot of us don't because we're afraid. Because we speak a different language. In a world that's been driven by operational thought processes, coming in thinking about people-driven processes, it is a different mindset. And yes, you're going to have that initial shock or reactions based by others. You're still planting seeds. And I guarantee that if you have done the audit, so you have the clarity, the compliance piece handled, and you know the causes or an idea of the causes, that's going to dictate, even be further reiterated when you categorize and understand what functions of HR are missing from an organization, or where you're spending most of your time, which we do an HR personality assessment. That's the main reason I developed it, is to let organizations know you're struggling with engagement and culture, yet your HR person has to be solely focused on task and compliance, which is about 80% of all of the HR practitioners we have surveyed. I mean, that's what they're forced into. And so you have that categorization. You're seeing your department as a department, even if you're one person. And then you have this containment. Yeah, containment, which is, how do I make sure it's the most efficient and effective way to use my time and the space that I'm given right now? All of those work together. And then if you accompany that with your focus being the vision and imagining what that working world that you are overseeing should be like, it's a powerful, powerful force. And a lot of these things we are doing without even really thinking about it. But subconsciously, you are taking that action. So you're still sending those ripples. You're still making those changes. Could you imagine what happens if you really just stepped into it and owned it? So that is my heart chat for today. And before we get to affirmations that I want to leave you with, I really want to just give a sneak peek about next week. With the work that I'm doing, it's inevitable that I have spiritual conversations with individuals about religion, and how that bleeds over. And I want to unpack that a little bit next week, addressing that aspect, but then also just from a more generic perspective. When we're having conversations with guides and we're being connected, yes, your belief system could be a higher power. It could be just your higher self. So that guidance in there. I think it's just important for you to understand, for your definition, what that being connected is like, and how can we develop that. One of the things that I found very early on is when I only connected sporadically, the emotion attached to being connected was so strong and overwhelming that I would just be in tears, that I couldn't really benefit from being connected. As we do it more consistently and develop a relationship and tap into it on a regular basis, that's when it really becomes a guiding force to assist us and aid us as we're tackling whatever we're tackling in the world. So we're going to talk about that next week as we close out our kind of heart-focused conversations, heart chats from the heart. All right, so I'm so grateful that you joined me this week. I'm going to leave you with our affirmations, which is a practice that we started last week, which really are just instilling kind of everything that we talked about and bringing it to this main space. So I'll leave you with affirmations, and I will see you next week, next Friday at 8 a.m. So let's get into these affirmations. Today's affirmations, if you're able to say them out loud with me or just close your eyes and listen. I am making a difference. I provide a value that is priceless. I am needed now more than ever. So true. You are needed now more than ever. Our businesses, our organizations need HR in this new reimagined way more than ever. Keep doing the work that you're doing. Take care of yourself. I'll talk to you next week.